I'd like to welcome to the show, season 5, Love is Blind cast member Chris Fox. How are you today, sir?
How you doing? I'm doing well. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you. The show was one of the more interesting and I guess you could say dramatic seasons I think we ever saw the show. I guess before we take the audience, let's take. Have you ever watched the show prior to going on to the show?
That's a good question. So when I was asked to be on the show, there's a lot of, interviewing and getting to know you. And I was just asking these very basic questions, and my interviewer was like, "Hey, just go watch the show." Like, all these can be answered in a 30-minute sit down and watch it. And so I watched through season 3, and then when season 4 came out, I watched that one as well. And that was my first time, so I was excited once I saw it.
I love hearing you say that when you got at like it's crazy to me because I know some people like apply and then there's other people that are recruited. So you kind of were recruited to be on the show.
That's correct. Yeah, I was messaged on Instagram, and I thought it was definitely a scam, but I was single, up for meeting my potential wife. I was looking for anything, and when they asked for like social security numbers and stuff, that's when I was like, okay, let me message the actual Love is Blind uh page, and they were like, yeah, just continue. This is real. We're not going to steal your identity. But
Right, you never know, right? You know what I mean? These days, it's crazy though to think that we live in a day and age where, maybe 10 years ago that would have been a laughable idea that you would have been approached on a social media app to join a reality TV program, right?
oh yeah, 100%. Like I'm worried there's stuff around that I'm gonna get doxxed, like you somehow see my address or something. It's crazy world we're in now, so you always got to be careful.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the early stages of the pods. What was that experience like for you and what was that kind of process like?
The early stages, well, I'll start with the very early stage of when we're flying out, we're all on the same flight. And I didn't know that, but I was looking around at the gate, and you see some good looking guys. You're like, oh, I wonder what if they're here. And I actually sat right next to Jared Gibson, and he said he knew I was going there for the same reason. When I pulled open a big thick book and turned to page 1, he was like, okay, he's definitely about to be in a hotel. Um, and so that's the first early stages, just like what's going on, what am I really getting into? And then finally you're in the pods, and it's so nerve-wracking because your wife could be 10 feet away from you, and all these cameras are focused on you, and so much is going on. But then you start to get in the rhythm of things, and the pods become more comfortable. It's less of a cage and more of a nest, I guess you would say. And you get more comfortable, and hopefully your partner on the other side is getting comfortable as well.
Obviously, we see a lot of the relationship flourish there with the Joni. But before we go there, was there anybody else that you might have connected with? That obviously, I know we all know that there's like so many hours of this show that are filmed and we're condensed into a bite-sized version of that with the whole editing process. But was there anybody else that maybe you made some early connections with?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I went into the show doing is I was going to give my all, be as honest and truthful as I could, and really live through the experience as best as possible. And I did connect with a girl named Steph, and that was my other kind of match. But yeah, you go through it and you make connections, and like I just said, when I went to it, I wanted to be as open, as honest, and me as possible. And little did I know that very vulnerable side of me was going to get aired. But when I told Johnie about my virginity experience, that was the first time I told anybody. She was the first person to ever hear about that. And that's what I brought from the whole experience. Was I'm so proud of myself for being able to open up, because I know some of the guys afterwards, I talked to them and they're like, I just couldn't open up. It was just too hard. And that's what I was proud about, is being able to be vulnerable and make these very real connections.
It's one of the things early in the process that had connected me to you. as I went through a similar experience myself, and that vulnerability, I believe, is something that lacks even in the world of reality TV. You know what I mean? People maybe think the idea or mock the idea of finding love, but you don't really find it until you are vulnerable in an extreme that you've never been before, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to tear your walls all the way down to allow that love to come in. Yeah, it's definitely scary, and you saw the bad part of that at the end of the season is I'm breaking down crying because I let my walls down. But going through life and not feeling that is not something I ever want to do. I you have to go through the ups and downs, and that's what life is.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's a freeing experience that came from that. All right. So we saw kind of what went down in the pods there. You and Joni kind of had your breakup, and then her and Izzy had her thing. And then one of the more impressive things I thought about your character early on was, I don't want to say, when Joni kind of came back to you in the pods, what made your decision to kind of walk away instead of jumping headfirst into somebody that you had really had fallen in love with?
Right. So that's the whole aspect of really falling in love with somebody is you really make these real connections over just a course of 2 weeks. And I did develop very real feelings, real emotions, and she broke my heart, as you can see. And at the time, what I was told, at least from production, was this had never happened before on the show. We're going to let Johnny come back and talk to you. And so that's the next day, right after a very real breakup. And, you need time to process these emotions, and it's a whirlwind of cameras, and you're in a place you've never been before. It's just crazy. And then, oh, wait, she wants to come back and talk to you. And I'm open to that. I have fallen for this girl. Of course, I want to hear from her again. And that's where you see me tell her, like, hey, I just went through something crazy. We're both going through something crazy. I need time to process this myself. What you don't see after that is as soon as I make that decision, I have no more matches. It's time to go home. And as I'm getting on the bus to go to the airport, one of the wranglers, I think is what his job title was, is like, hey, this is reality television. This isn't over yet. You're going to be on the plane sitting right next to Johnny. And so, really, the only time I got to process this breakup is the ride from the pods to the airport. And that's where I just started getting caught up in this whirlwind of, wow, we had such a great bond, but what do I need? I need to try and work this out. I have so much going on in my head. And that's really where I started to fumble and trip up on making the right decision in a crazy time.
Absolutely. It's crazy to think about that because, like you said, you had fallen for this woman, and then you're anytime you break up with somebody, the last person you want to, or even in that situation, last person you kind of really want to see is that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Yeah.
hey, just letting you know, I know you broke up, but we're gonna put you guys together regardless. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly.
Okay, let's fast forward a little bit to the barbecue. We know that's the most one of the most talked about things, not just for what happened with you guys, but everything. It was one of the most
Yeah.
wildest barbecue I don't know if I really would want to go to, but also I kind of want to go to type of thing. You know what I
Yeah, you
mean?
want to be a fly on the wall.
Exactly. Let's talk about the barbecue first before we kind of dive into some of the details. Obviously, we had the kind of explosive scene with the Izzy and Stacy. What kind of transpired that maybe we didn't see, and what we saw in that moment that you kind of remembered?
Okay, so the barbecue was right after everyone got back from Mexico. This is maybe a week, 2 weeks after Johnny and I had just gotten to Houston, and we're still trying to figure things out. We go together, and they have us walk in separately for effect. And everything in the pods, what I tell people and what is true in my heart is everything in the pods is so real, so raw. You talk about everything you want to talk about. You have no, hey, you should talk about this or anything like that. It's just you, your partner, and America watching. But the barbecue was very like, hey, you should probably talk to this person about this. And I'm not a very confrontational person. That's why, I mean, that was my biggest problem is I don't like confrontation. That's something I'm working on every day. I see a therapist, but that's here in a different story. But when you see Izzy and I having this conversation and it looks very heated and oh my gosh, like what's going on? Me and Izzy are friends and we're just having a conversation and I never really would have been in that situation if it wasn't for, hey Chris, you should talk to Izzy about him and Johnny's relationship. Like that's not really me. I wouldn't have done that. I'm focused on my relationship with her. I don't really care about his.
Yeah, that's crazy to me because watching it from the outside looking in, I've done plenty of interviews about the show, but it felt like almost as if we didn't have enough drama because we only had like two relationships. It was like the first time ever we only had two people going to the altar. It's like we need something to kind of carry out the rest of the show. And it was interesting to kind of see it because the confrontational part, I'm the same way. Like it doesn't make sense for you to go over and like, hey, Izzy, da 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 da, like whatever.
Right.
All right, let's fast forward a little bit. Obviously, how you handle yourself at the barbecue, and how you were in the pods, you were kind of America's darling in one some way, you know what I mean, from the Love Is Blind world. However, we fast forward to the reunion and everything kind of comes out to everything always comes out. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
it. So I guess the timeline, correct me if I'm wrong here. You left it's California, right?
Yeah. LA. Yes.
You left LA, you go to Texas. It's about 1 to 2 weeks on the barbecue scene, right?
Right.
And then when is the situation? When does the date happen or her birthday happen, and then the situation unfold? How far away from is that? Is that?
Okay. So, I mean, this is now 2 years ago, so it could be a week off or so, but it is, like you said, LA to Houston. Then the barbecue scene is a week and a half probably from being home. And the barbecue was actually the last time that I saw Johnie in person is we did this barbecue. I had my wedding in New Jersey. Um, and even within those 2 to 3 weeks, like at the reunion, Johnie is hesitant to say the word cheating. It was Vanessa who really put that word in her mouth. Because I did tell her I needed to step back. And as you can see in some of her interviews, she mentions like I was still in a whirlwind of emotions. I didn't know what was going on. We had been on two, maybe three dates maximum. Um, it's like I didn't handle myself well, but it's not, we weren't riding off into the sunset. Our relationship wasn't a year long and then I just ghosted her. It was wrong how I handled it, but it's,
So, and that's the thing that I think that obviously got lost in the shuffle is not being able to explain your relationship with Johnie at that time, right? You know what I mean?
right.
Like obviously it's just, oh my God, Chris, you cheated. And now it's like you're you go from again the tie end to oh man, he's
To
the more
villain,
yeah,
yeah.
you're the villain of Love Is Blind season 5. And what after reunion, obviously, and we'll talk a little bit about the relationship that you had at the time of the reunion, but after the reunion, what was it like for you?
Are you asking at the reunion with me and Johnie, or you're
Well,
just
just
saying,
you as a person, because obviously you come away from after not the reunion itself, when the reunion airs,
oh,
obviously.
that flip of
Yes,
love
that flip.
to being
Right.
hated?
Love to being hated. What was it kind of like for you, kind of maybe mentally? Because I know that can be a little bit taxing in that process, right?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely very taxing. People hear cheating, and as you should, that's red flags, like not good. Um, and I start from people. in my comments saying, love you, congratulations, so glad you made the right choice or this choice, we're proud of you. And to, the worst of the worst, like I don't want to repeat the things that, people are saying. Fans love this show, and that's a great thing and a bad thing. People love the show, and I love the fans, and things come along with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people to me have always forgotten there is a human element. Like Christopher Fox is a human being outside of what
Yes.
we saw on TV. We only see the minimal amounts of these people, but and yes, you are putting your life in front of everybody to see. Yeah, we understand that.
Yeah, I
However,
signed up for it, but still, I mean, have a little respect. I'm a human. I have feelings. I made a mistake, and I'm doing everything in my power to learn from that mistake. And if you don't, that's what life is you go through these struggles, and that's what makes you you, is you go through the struggle, and how you come out on the other side is hopefully going to be a better person. And that's what I do every day, is try to get 1% better.
I, I guess the thing from there is looking back on kind of what happened and understanding a little bit different. Obviously, you could have handled yourself a little bit differently. We all know that yes, maybe you should have communicated, but were you and Johnny in a committed relationship at the time, or were you guys just seeing each other?
It's so hard to really decipher it, because you're going from what's real and what's cameras. What did I really feel? What did we really feel for each other? Where were we emotionally? And what's, hey, we're going to this cookout because they asked us to go to this cookout. Like, would we actually be going to a pool party together? Who knows? It's very wishy-washy. We went on a few dates. We were definitely exploring where our relationship was going to go. It's, it was a very short-lived relationship.
Since the reunion, since the show, what kind of things have you done to maybe, reflect on your time and maybe realize some of the mistakes you made or some of the things that you might have pulled from the experience that you can use for future relationships?
The number one thing I've learned, and it's something I struggled with my whole life. I went to therapy with my father and I, because I wouldn't communicate. It's something I've always struggled with, is being able to tell people news that they don't want to hear. I'm a people person, or a people pleaser, and that's always been a struggle. But the main thing I learned is, if someone loves you, they want you to tell them what's wrong. They want to be able to help you. And that's the main thing that I took away from the whole experience. Like, if you're in a relationship, that person should want to hear the bad news. They want to be there for you, to hear it's not all rainbows and sunshine.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And that's the thing that's definitely interesting. Just a few more questions. Do you keep in contact with any of the castmates still?
Um, so most of the guys, Jared, Connor, Ernesto, Izzy, Rob, Josh, all those guys, we talk not every day. We're not best friends, but once a week we're definitely texting, saying what's up, making jokes, sending stuff. Um, Uche, we were good friends with Uche. I haven't really spoken to him much recently. But most of the guys I still talk to. The girls, you never really met them. You come out of the show and you never really met them. So it's like, it's not a real, I'm not going to say it's not a real relationship, but it's not something I can build on, because I wouldn't even recognize them at a bar. And then Johnie and I, we never really spoke, because she's in a whole new relationship. I'm in a whole new relationship. And I think that's just, personally, that's kind of like crossing lines. You don't need to be doing that. And that's why on the reunion, you see us talking and giggling so much, is because we're catching up. We haven't seen each other in so long. But that's who I talked to from the cast. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people don't remember and realize obviously the reunion being filmed a little bit newer, but the show itself, like we're talking about almost two
Yeah.
years ago now. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's crazy how long when you film it. What's that process like? Even going through the entire process, what's the behind the scenes? Like you have to keep quiet. You can't say, obviously you can't say anything. You can't do anything. Like what's that whole entire behind the scenes? Like why you wait for your season to kind of air?
Yeah, it's it's very interesting. I told my mom like, "Hey, I'm going on a show. I can't really tell you what it is." And she's very supportive. She said, "Just don't get naked," and I'm happy. And so I made her proud. I didn't go there. Um, and it's just like keeping this secret that you're about to be blown up on, Netflix. My face was on the Netflix cover screen for a little bit. It's like, wow, it's such a tough secret to keep. Only a few people really know what's going on. And then um you see the next season come out, like the one before mine, season 4 came out, and I'm just watching it and looking in the background at all the little cups, and oh, I know where this is, and it's such a different viewing experience rather than watching what's going on. I'm like, oh, I remember I was sitting right there and it's crazy.
I didn't even think about that. Like, so 4 and 5 obviously filmed back to back, close to each other. Um, did you have any inkling of maybe what you felt like was going to be maybe your arc early on by watching season 4 before 5?
I was the worst about like knowing what was going to happen. Some of the cast, like we were a little unsure because there was so I don't know if it was little drama or too much drama. Some of us, there were talks of them just like scrapping the whole season, and just how they scrap, certain couples. Some of us were like, okay, maybe we're not even going to be aired because this is so bad. But yeah, at the beginning, obviously, I was really happy with my cut. I knew that, not to be cocky or bragging or anything, I knew I was who I am. I wasn't putting on a show, and they're really, it would have been very, very difficult. Someone would have had to gotten a big raise if they somehow made me the bad guy in the pod. So I was comfortable, some people not so much. It's always nerve-wracking no matter what.
For sure. Now the question is could we ever see Chris on another reality TV show?
100%. I would love to do it. The whole experience was unbelievable. Like from day one, meeting the cast and production and crew, and so much goes into it. Like the first day I get there, my notebook that we used to write notes in, they misspelled my name, and I just jokingly mention it, and they're like, "Oh my God, we gotta!" And within 5 minutes, they have a whole new notebook printed with my correct spelling on it. It's like, how did y'all do this? It's truly insane. The whole world of television is wild, and I loved it.
That's awesome. What's next for Chris?
Right now, I'm still just working on my fostering dogs, going to work. I just opened a clothing store here in Houston with my father, and that's where most of my time is going into right now. Yep.
We did hear that though, ladies. He is on the market. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I can't wait to see what's next for you, man.
Thank you so much.